What's up, guys? Today I'm excited to have on a guy I coached with back in the day in the Anaheim Ducks youth hockey programs, and current content creator and Ducks analyst with his Ducks Gameday Breakdown, Zach Gray. Zach, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. It's been a while, and happy to be on here. So
Yeah, of course. So before we talk about our respective NHL clubs here, as I mentioned, you're a former coach.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I get asked this too, how did you get into coaching hockey as a Californian?
So where it all started for me was like right at the beginning. I started volunteering at Aliso Viejo Ice Palace, and I knew a guy, and I knew the owner over there, Fred, and he's like, yeah, come on out, see how you do. And so I volunteered for like 3 weeks, and the guy Sean Beatty, who works for Gold Rush, I think he's the head of the Avalanche travel hockey team that's out of there now. And he's like, I know you're looking for something more. I'll hit up Rick Hutchinson at the Ducks. And I was like, okay, cool. And so then he hit him up. I started doing, the learn to plays and everything. And I played all up and down Northern Southern California for over 20 years, just playing, double A, triple A hockey. And back then, and you know this very well, how small Skaha was back then when we were kids. It's blown up massively. And, started coaching for, the Ducks there for a little bit. And then I went over to Ice Dogs, coached over a little bit at the Wave. And yeah, man, it's like coached for about 6 years. So, and I know you and we did some learn to plays together at Lakewood a bunch of
We were in the
times.
trenches.
So, yeah. So it was fun, man. And there's days where I miss it, but like you and I were talking about before, it's just there's those headaches that we got to deal with where these are kids at the end of the day. It's not the NHL level.
Don't tell the parents that.
No.
I'm glad you brought up Skaha, though, or for my question, also Kaha related, but I wanted to ask, have you kept up with kind of the AAA situation in with Kaha, with just the NHL clubs now pretty much having access to having AAA teams?
I've heard rumblings about it. I don't know the full scope of it, but I have heard there's some I'm going to use the word nepotism that
or,
they
or
only
hockey
want
politics,
right, like they only want big, the big clubs out there like the Junior Kings or the Ducks, but it's the thing that's such a shame though is like the smaller clubs, like one that was always really good growing up when I was a kid was the Bay Harbor Red Wings and even the Ontario Moose. Like they always have really good clubs, but for some reason I've heard like even when they had good clubs, they weren't invited. I don't know if that's true. That's just hearsay, but yeah. What have you heard?
Well, it's kind of like a big deal, I guess. The fact that it was just the NHL, youth programs, so Junior Ducks, Junior Kings, Junior Sharks that get to have those AAA. A lot of the other really good clubs, lost their kind of AAA, I guess. But it's been strange because I'm still seeing some teams with AAA, but it's just the numbers gone down a lot, and it's just weird. I don't know if it's made this huge difference that a lot of people have talked about. Really, people thought that Junior Kings and Junior Ducks were then just going to be able to load up even more than they have in the past and become like real powerhouses, but. If this season is any indicator, it's actually been kind of the opposite. It has not had that effect. But yeah, it's just been really strange, especially from like a scout's perspective. Before we would be watching, a handful or two handfuls of teams, and then now it's you're essentially watching like 3 different clubs in California. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know if this necessarily is a good thing for California, youth hockey, but yeah, we'll see, I guess.
That's kind of explains the reasoning behind, like, and this very well, and we both know where they've had oh, I'm sorry, baby, that's It's my dog. They have an A1, they have an A2 team, they have an A3 team, and it's just, and I get it. You're trying to, get more players and everything. You're just trying to just create teams just for the sake of it. But I've seen some AAA teams and I'll give an example. Is the Ontario Reign, and I mean I remember seeing, they're still called the Ontario Reign, right?
Yeah.
And they're not a
Junior
AAA
Reign?
team.
Or-
Junior Reign, yeah. And I had a kid who played there after playing 1 year of B for the Ice Dogs, and dude, they got lit up double digits every game. And I know that I heard some clubs were removing the AAA like you were talking about, but and that's why these parents who invest so much money into going to Kaha, playing at the AAA level, and it's like as soon as you're done with tryouts, it's like you're off and going. So it's it's interesting.
For sure. So, okay, now I want to move us into the NHL here and a little bit also yourself as far as you've been doing the Ducks Gameday Breakdowns. How long have you been doing that for?
So I started it back up. This is my third season.
Oh, okay.
And I did it a little bit back in the day, and then I stopped, and coaching got in the way. I just had so much going on. And then, I just kind of went to the drawing board and just thought about, okay, what are other social media things not doing? And, I've met with, a couple of people in marketing with the Ducks and stuff, and they're like, hey, we see people around, who know who you are, and, just know that we know who you are. And I was like, okay, cool.
Is that a threat?
No, I don't know. But I mean, I think the biggest thing in coming from a coach's perspective and former player, it's like, I just want to give people, especially the casual fan, some insight to why that play happened, and I always get super excited to just dive into stuff like that. So,
yeah, I appreciate how you take. I feel like fans really resonate with your content because you don't bullshit and you tell it like it is, and there's not a ton of that really out there, so I think it's really cool how you dive in. You don't sugarcoat anything, and you tell it like it is. And this is good and bad, but it reflects in your comment section. Sometimes you get some of the Ducks fans pretty riled up, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I think that's a net positive.
I think the biggest thing, and especially with Ducks fans, and I mean this is with all fans over the National Hockey League, it's just fans don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear that, hey, this is going to be another year where we're possibly going to be a bottom feeder for the Pacific, and and for me, it's like sometimes I'm a little too honest. But then again, it's just guys, I'm seeing the writing on the wall, with the Greg Cronin situation and, with the Trevor Zegras drama we were dealing with last year. I mean, it's just, it's good to talk about it because nobody else is. Everybody's too afraid to, because Zegras is a popular player, and people are like, yeah, but I love him so much. I bought the jersey, I bought the merchandise, and I'm like, yeah, but it's a business. We love this team, but it's also a business at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad you brought up Zegras. I definitely want to get around to talking about him a little bit, but I don't know how familiar you are with the the sports writer Helene Elliott. She's pretty big, pretty respected. I think mostly in LA though. But I wanted your thoughts on a tweet or an X, whatever they're called now, that she had. So this was just 8 games into the season. And she said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, this is almost exactly what she said, but she said the Ducks should be better. They've collected young talent over the past few seasons, but have made so little progress. And this was only 8 games into the season, mind you. What are your thoughts on that? How much do you agree with that?
She's not wrong. I don't know how this team, and I don't know how many Ducks games you've watched this year, Nick, but I mean,
handful or so.
Yeah, I don't know how this team, and that's why I made that post the other day about, I don't believe it's a player problem. I believe it's a coaching and development problem. And I know that for some that's very easy to just be like, oh, it's that guy, he's the reason. And it's a number of things, but you have to point out the obvious things where it's like, how is it that this time last year we had fight in us, we were aggressive, we constantly fought till the very last whistle. Now it's like, we don't know if we're going to show up or not. We were down 3-1 to the Red Wings just a night ago, and I sat in my seat and I'm like, there's no way we're coming back. And then they came back, they won the game, but it's that feeling of just, why are we worse than last year? We should be taking a step, not taking 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back. And it just, I don't know. It's a very, very odd thing.
Yeah, so, and adding on that, I guess generally speaking, how would you say generally the Ducks rebuild is going? I know you just mentioned you should be moving forward, not backwards, so that's for sure. But just generally speaking, how do you feel the rebuild's going over there?
I mean, the way it's going, before the season started, we're like, okay, we're going to get a full season with Cutter Gauthier. We're going to, get Minty back. We're going to get McTavish. He's going to be healthy. Everybody's coming into camp healthy. On paper, you look at this team, and I'm like, you guys should be competing. I'm not saying you're going to be going to the wild card or a playoff spot or whatnot, but you should not be getting just peppered 45, 50 shots a game. So I think there's been some missteps by Pat Verbeek. I think that, with the Zegras and Drysdale drama of last year, I feel has really rubbed off on Zegras, and I feel it's awkward. It's awkward for him. It's awkward probably with the coaching staff, because he is improving, but also I just see some guys, they're just checked out. They look completely checked out. So it's and if I were to answer your question, sorry I rambled on there for a bit.
No, that's good.
If I were to say, I'm kind of in like the I don't know category. I'm like, I'm looking at our team on paper and I'm like, there's no reason why you guys shouldn't be competing every night. So
speaking of Zegras, so Zegras has a pretty right on the money comparable right down the freeway. We have a guy with the Kings who's kind of in the same situation as Zegras as far as expectations up here and production down here. So I'm gonna describe a little bit of my kind of diagnosis of Quinton Byfield's kind of season, and then you can tell me if it at all matches how you would describe Zegras. So I would say in Byfield's situation, you watch him and you just see just tools galore, just all the tools, speed, tenacity, he's got hustle, he's big, he back checks, he's got good vision with the puck, he could set up plays, just tools, all the tools you could ask for. Just, you would kind of say, kind of missing the toolbox, and that's not a hockey IQ diss or anything. It's not that. It's just you have all the tools, but just you're not putting them together and producing. So I don't know how similar that is to how you would describe Zegras's start to the season.
I think this is where I'm at with Zegras right now. I think what it boils down to is he's trying to adjust his game to where he's never actually had to play this way. Because in the Dallas Eakins era, when he first came up, he only played one way. And now he's like, okay, now I got to play defense. Now I got to play offense. I also may be on the penalty kill. And he's never been put in that spot. And I think for him, it's like, dude, you have all the tools, but for some reason you have 3 points in now 16 games. And it's getting out of hand. And I agree with you about the comparison between Quinton Byfield and Trevor Zegras. I think that's a really good comparison. Because, dude, when I watch Quinton Byfield play the Ducks, dude, he's just on. Between him and Kempe, I'm like, dude, you guys just eat us alive every single time. So I think that's a good comparison, though.
Yeah, it's frustrating, because those are both, I would say, probably like the premier sort of young guy on the team. And for both of their production to be what it is, I believe both of them just got big contracts this last summer. right? Zegras had the situation. That was the
Zegras
summer.
got the bridge deal, so he has
Okay.
one more year after this season, and
Okay.
then I think he got 5.5 over 3 years. So,
Gotcha. So yeah, they
mhm,
both got new deals. So there's expectations there, and yeah, it's just the production, man. It's just like you
mhm.
said, you watch a game of Byfield, and you're like, this guy's a 40 goal scorer, but then you look at the stats, and you're like, oh, I think this got to be a typo, right? But
What
unfortunately, it's
what's
not.
what was his contract? I didn't see that one.
Uh, I don't remember exactly. I know it was a good one. It was up there. I
Was it a
forgot
long
exactly what it
term
was.
one or was it a bridge deal?
No, it had term on it.
Ah, okay,
Yeah, it
okay.
wasn't a. I didn't have my stats ready here, but let me pull it up.
No, it's all good.
I want to say it was like 6 mil.
Ooh,
Yeah, 5 year. Yeah, 5 year deal. Six
wow,
point two.
dang.
Yeah, 5 years, 6.2. So that's a nice contract.
Yeah.
So yeah, the production's got to get there for sure. Um,
Mhm.
so the other thing I wanted to do was we could kind of give a little assessments or our opinions on the team down the freeway. So we're kind of
Mhm.
looking at each other's teams here a little bit. But
Mhm.
who's your all-time favorite LA King?
Oh man. I'd probably go Luke Robitaille. You know,
That's a good one.
I like I'd say between him and Yari Curry.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only Yari Curry guy. I feel like he's like the hipster pick. Like he
Yeah.
slept on.
No, dude, I got my wife found a Mighty Ducks Nike jersey of Yari Curry from this duck seller, and he's like, yeah, I was cleaning out storage and I found this jersey if you guys want it, and I was like, yeah, please.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome. Yeah, he was on the Ducks too. That's right.
mhm.
Um,
Who's yours?
for me, I would have to go. I mean, I love Solani. Who doesn't? But I would have to go Paul Correa because that was my first ever hockey poster up on my wall.
Mhm.
Was Paul Correa, and that guy, somehow he's still underappreciated. Like that guy is
Yeah.
unbelievable, and people talk about Gretzky with creating people like us who got into hockey in California. They credit Gretzky, which they should, but I think
Mhm.
right there with Gretzky was Paul Correa. That was the first superstar we had in Southern California. Well, for the Ducks franchise for sure, but yeah, he was one
Mhm.
of the first big hockey names here.
Yeah, I mean, between and that's one thing. I had a discussion with one of my buddies at my office. We were talking about Paul Correa, and I'm like, he's very underappreciated, and it just sucks that after he left, after that huge hit from Scott Stevens, and he went to the Colorado Avalanche with Timu, he's just derailed by injuries and concussions, and it's just a shame. And he, I think about it all the time. Like, man, what if he was a part of that '07 team when the Ducks lifted the cup that year? But then again, somebody posted something where if he did stay, there's no way we would have been able to sign Scott Niedermayer or Chris Pronger.
Hmm.
So
That makes sense.
yeah, but
Yeah, geez, that would have been lethal. I mean, because him and Timu reunited with the Avs, and
mhm.
they had that like complete cheat code roster over there with Colorado.
Yeah, dude, and if anybody hasn't seen the 30 for 30 on the Colorado Avalanche, it's on YouTube. It's a great watch,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
yeah, it's
So
insane. I saw it.
yeah.
Um, okay, how about current? Who's your favorite current guy on the Kings roster? Who would you take on the Ducks in a heartbeat?
Uh, Probably because he kills us every time. I got to go Adrian Kempe. I mean, dude's just he's tough. He plays at both ends of the ice. He's great in the small areas, and I think the biggest thing that the Ducks are missing is just that toughness. How about you for the Ducks?
Uh, hmm. Who would I take on the Kings? I mean, I would definitely want to go a younger guy. I mean, I think Minchikov's outstanding. I've watched him since he was in the OHL. Uh,
Hmm.
I was just always impressed with that guy, and I haven't grown any less impressed watching him in the NHL. I feel like it's scary what that dude's going to be in his prime because there's just so much,
Hmm.
so much potential. And even though the Ducks are, they've been in the rebuild and things have been kind of shaky, I just watching him somehow be stable back there when there's so many things going on. Yeah, that's a guy. I mean, I think when you get a young, solid defenseman in your franchise, that is, hang on to them.
Hmm. I'd say between him and Olin, because I mean, dude, that kid. I thought he should have been playing last year. I know he played a few games last year,
Hmm.
but just seeing how when Jackson Lacombe went down, he got called up and he hasn't left ever since.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean the decor is great. It just got to get the offense going, man. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, Sort of on that same note, who would you say is the best prospect uh, in the King system? Which prospect do you favor the most?
Um, I'm kind of unfamiliar with the King. Could you list some names for me?
Yeah.
Quite a few.
Well, you want a goalie? You want a D?
I'll go. I'll go decor.
As far, I mean, Brant Clark is right there.
I would say that's a good one.
Yeah, that's kind of I would say the top guy as far as highly regarded.
And
Uh,
who's your like? I'd say like right winger, the right or left winger.
Prospect wise,
Yeah.
um, as far as on the wings go, dang, who do we even have? I would say Hellenius because he's getting some NHL games, but he's a center.
Hmm.
Um, Honestly, a couple of the wingers kind of in a situation where maybe the production, maybe their stock gone down a little bit. That's
Hmm.
probably a little bit of a weakness in the King system, honestly, at the wing. Some centers are decent, Frankie Pinelli, but he's another guy whose production's kind of stalled out a little bit at the pro level.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, winger might be a little thin on the Kings, honestly.
That's one question I wanted to ask for you since we're talking about we're talking Ducks and Kings here.
Hmm.
Is Kings are obviously in win now mode. Like they gotta get past the Oilers and everything. But my whole outlook that I'm looking at is obviously life after Kopitar, life after Drew Doughty. What does that look like for you?
Uh, Honestly, for me, as I mentioned, like some of the prospects, the Kings their prospect pool was regarded as the best in the NHL like 2 seasons ago. And
I
then, like
saw
I
that. Yeah.
mentioned, it's kind of slipped now. And it's not
Hmm.
regarded the top certainly anymore. So I think, yeah, they got a plan for who's going to take Kopitar's place, who's going to take Doughty's place. I mean, people will say Brant Clark, and I think that's fair, but um, I think it's going to get to the point now where, there's either got to be a home run or two in the next draft or a
Hmm.
trade for a younger guy who could come in for the next 5 years and take their place. Because right now, honestly, the system, I wouldn't say they're prepared to fill Kopitar or Doughty's holes yet.
Hmm.
So that there, you might have to start exploring some trade options and things like that. But yeah,
Hmm.
right now it's not like, oh, we have someone right and ready to take Kopitar's spot.
Right. Some big shoes to fill, man. I'll tell you that because I remember watching him when he first came up in '05, '06, and I was like, dude, that guy's gonna be special. And dude, it's that's I wanted to get it from since you're a Kings fan and everything, like your perspective on like what is that gonna look like, in the future. So
Yeah, yeah, it's as of right now, I think there's some work to do
Mm-hmm.
to bring in a couple guys you feel comfortable about taking over. But yeah, I mean, funny enough, the Kings are like loaded at goaltender for the near future. With Portillo, who's been great in the AHL, and then Carter George, who's just been tearing up the Ontario League. He scored a goal the other night as a goalie. And then Hampton, who's in the NCAA. I mean, just so many good goaltending prospects. It's crazy. So it might get to that point where maybe you use one of them as a trade chip to get that future, Kopitar replacement or something. But yeah,
Right.
the Kings, Rob Blake's definitely got his work cut out for him. It's they're going to need to add for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with the Dubois thing that didn't work out, which I could have told you that. I mean,
A lot of people, yeah.
I mean, and I mean that falls on Rob Blake. I mean, he's the one that really pushed for that deal. And I mean, you guys tried something, didn't work out. He's doing well in Washington, from what the team's doing well. I don't know how he's doing, but yeah, no, man, it should be interesting.
Yeah, the Dubois one was. I don't know if there's been any trades that worked out more poorly for an NHL team in recent memory. That was real bad. In Rob Blake's defense, I will say, he recovered nicely from that, like somehow, some way, to be able to trade Dubois' contract and not have to retain any salary was. I couldn't believe it when I first saw it. So I'm like, yeah, that was a terrible trade. It worked out very poorly, but we gave up assets to like Velarde and Kupari. I mean, just it was not good at all. But to be able to kind of save face was some good work by Blake. But yeah, initially you do not want to make a trade that bad.
No, absolutely not. I mean, when that deal first went through, and then it was a sign and trade, right? They gave him like a long-term deal and traded for him as well. I'm like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, it could work, it may not, but I was like, I don't really feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, I really don't feel that he's really proven himself. With the Jets, with the Blue Jackets, I mean, he really didn't prove himself at all. And I'm like, where do you feel like you deserve all this right now?
Yeah, for sure.
So.
I mean, that is even looking. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, obviously, but looking back at Dubois' kind of NHL career, and you see the problems he had with coaches and even effort. There's like viral clips of his, back check or his effort and things like that, and it's like that's not great when you're giving up so much for guys like that, and then they get into your town and they're doing the exact same stuff. But that guy was very, very frustrating to watch. And it's like, anyone who pulls on a Kings jersey, I'm gonna wish for the best for him and want them all to do well. But yeah, it's very frustrating to watch guys who just are taking shifts off and letting their teammates kind of down. So
right.
Yeah, it was tough. The other thing I wanted to ask you, where do you feel like the Kings are going to finish this season?
I would say probably third or fourth in the division if they stay healthy.
What do you
But
think
right
the first
now-
round playoff series would look like?
I mean, just watch. You guys are going to play the Oilers again.
I will give up. I will give up watching hockey if the Kings play the Oilers again.
They go on a 16-game win streak again, then you guys got to play them again. I mean, I think for me, if they get into the playoffs, I think it's just a matter of how healthy they are. Because most of those guys, they've done so many deep runs over the years. It takes a toll on your body. I mean, hockey, it's one of the toughest trophies to win in sports. I mean, for a reason. And I mean, guys just, in that first round, they beat the shit out of each other. And I mean, I would love to see them face off against Vegas. That'd be a great matchup. That'd be fun. But if you guys don't play the Oilers, I could see you guys getting past the first round. I don't know what it is about the Oilers and you guys, but like for some reason they got your guys' number for some reason.
Well, historically, more skill, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They have more skill than anyone almost, and very, very physical. Like they had a very physical team and just out-muscled the King. They pretty much looked at the Kings and said, "Which way do you want it? Like, we'll out-tough you and we'll out-skill you with Draisaitl and McDavid." So it's like, what do you guys want? So, yeah, the Kings got a little bit beefier this season. I've really liked Tanner Jeannot so far. Fogel's been great. So a little beefier, a little bit more tough. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, just the Oilers are totally the Kings' kryptonite, but they're a great team. What about, how do you see the Ducks season ending?
So realistically, I could see them finishing, I'd say like 29th in the league. I think they're going to finish 7th or 8th. I still think they're going to finish better than the Sharks. They're going to get that top 3 pick. Now, the biggest question, I've talked about this with my wife and a couple of other Ducks fans and stuff. If they don't make a decision about Greg Cronin quickly, you're going to lose a lot of guys in that locker room who either don't want to sign here, don't want to play here. And people make the joke, they're like, oh, well, Marcia Salt and Stamkos didn't want to play here. And I'm like, yeah, but guys, like, it's a tax thing. They wanted to go to a team that's ready to go right now, which makes sense. The fact that we went after those guys, I appreciate that. Does it hurt? Yeah, of course. But where the Ducks have been playing through we played Dallas tonight. I don't expect that to go very well. I could see them finishing 29th or 30th in the league.
So do you think at the end of the day, at the end of the season, do you feel like there's going to be a step forward this season over last season, or no?
The way that they're playing, no. Guys just look checked out, Nick. I watched the bench very closely, like just to kind of see the body language. Mm-hmm. And when a coach talks to a player, you're looking at them. Greg doesn't do that. He looks down, and the player's looking up at him, and he's just looking down. He doesn't give him that eye contact. Mm-hmm. He talks about accountability and everything, but it's like, okay, man, but you're the head coach of this team. You got to take some accountability too, because you don't make in-game adjustments. And that's our biggest flaw, is that he does not make adjustments when it comes to the forecheck, the back checking. Dude, we are the worst line-changing team I've ever seen. It's bad. I would say that whatever team that we coached in Skaha line changed better than they do. I'll put it to you that way.
Oh, man.
So it's and I'm not looking forward to that Black Friday game against the Kings, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, at least, hopefully it'll be an entertaining game. That's kind of my gripe a little bit with the Kings, is like, there's certain games where the Kings absolutely dominate from start to finish, but they kind of lull you to sleep a little bit. And I don't know if that's it's from an entertainment standpoint, it's definitely not a good thing.
No.
But, that's my one gripe with the Kings, is like, I don't know, maybe because I'm a hockey purist and like I'm nostalgia and old school. I kind of miss the old hockey a little bit. But it just, sometimes the Kings have these flawless games and I'm like falling asleep. Like, could we, I don't know. I just miss the physical brand of hockey, and the Kings have like really gotten away from that. And it's almost like watching a different sport when you watch, like if you were to watch the 2007 Ducks team, and then you watch like, the Kings, over the last few seasons, or another, I don't know who another like very skill-based team would be, maybe Colorado. It's like a different sport. It's like a total different sport. But I love that old school hockey. Like the way the Ducks won that 2007 Cup, I was so jealous. Not even really because they won the Cup, but just like, damn, the way that they won it, the fashion they won it, just absolutely running over everybody. You had Pronger and Sean Thornton.
Pronger, Brad May.
Oh yeah, just yeah, just nasty. So yeah, I've always really liked that brand of hockey. So hopefully the Kings can kind of get there someday.
The thing I would love to see, Nick, is if the '07 Ducks played the 2014 Kings.
Oh, that
That
would
would
be
be
crazy.
because both those teams, I mean, and I agree with you. I think the Kings have definitely gone away from that tough style of play, but I think that's just the game now,
Yeah,
where
I
it's
agree.
all speed, it's all gas, it's all skill. It's not so much about the physicality of the game anymore. And I agree with you, man. Like I miss those days of teams like the '97 Red Wings and Colorado, like where they just beat the shit out of each other.
Hmm.
And now it's like we get there when we're in the playoffs, but it's not like that when they're trying to beef up this rivalry with the Ducks and the Kings, and it's like, well, there a rivalry or is there not? Like
I know.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It almost seemed like kind of forgotten about a little bit too. Especially the Kings started developing a really good rivalry with Vancouver, and those were
mhm,
always really exciting games. But then the Kings play the Ducks, and it's like, oh, freeway face off, and then
mhm,
it's kind of like crickets, during the game. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm totally old man yelling at cloud when it comes to that. I will be the first to admit it. Like it is what it is. But like I sometimes I watch old games from the dead puck era or whatever
Oh yeah.
they call it. But I was watching a game recently. I don't know when it was from. Like it might have been like Heatley and Kovalchuk with Atlanta, and I was just like watching one of their games, and I'm like, this is total bullshit what we've been told about the game is so much faster and more skill based now.
Mhm,
And I'm watching this game and I'm like, there's a ton of skill going on here. The game's
mhm.
fast, the pace is good, like so I think that's a little bit of a misconception about old school hockey is that it's like slow and there's no pace and there's no skill. Like I think that's totally not true.
So I just to wrap this up, but I was watching I think it was the '88 Stanley Cup of I think it was the Oilers and the Islanders, and I was even watching that one, and I was like, dude, there's speed, there's skill, there's physicality, and these guys are wearing heavier equipment, heavier skates, and like what's going on? And like even in that '97 Stanley Cup final with the Flyers and the Detroit Red Wings, like dude, even that had a ton of skill.
Hmm. Totally.
So yeah.
As far as Cronin, probably last note here.
Mhm.
As far as Coach Cronin goes, do you think there's any way that maybe the type of team the Ducks are just was a bad fit for him, and maybe he's a coach that probably would have been better suited for maybe an older team. I mean, it's so hard for a lot of guys to take on young teams
Mhm.
and really be teachers. So sometimes you
Mhm.
have a good coach where it's a bad fit. I guess that would probably fall more on Pat Verbeek hiring him if that was the case. But uh,
Mhm.
do you feel that that's at all the situation there?
I do agree with that, and then there's a part of me that doesn't because he also coached with Randy Carlisle in Toronto, and he was a part of those teams where they had Dion Phaneuf, Nazem Kadri,
Hmm.
a bunch of old guys like Joffrey Loophole, and he didn't do well there. And then he was only an assistant; he wasn't the head coach, but um, you know, I just think that going in, we're like, okay, we want this hard nosed coach. We want this guy who's going to tell the guys, like, this is what's going on, or you're going to sit. And he said all the right things in his press conference. Like, we were all jazzed about it. And I mean, just from that day one of training camp when I went, it was a different feel. And I think it worked for a certain amount of time. But I think and I've heard some rumblings within the organization, like the story with Ilya Labushkin that came out and said like he was like a drill sergeant. They would come to the rink and go to practice, and then they would have to sit in this 45-minute meeting, and then, it was just it was just a whole thing where they're like, dude, screw this guy. Like I'm grown ass man. Like I'm not gonna listen to him. So I just don't think he's a good fit for this young core. I just don't.
Is there a guy out there that that you would like to see take the team on?
Honestly, if the Bruins fired their coach, I'd be open to that. That's Montgomery, right?
Jim Montgomery?
Jim Montgomery. I'd be open to that. I'm not going to be into the Todd McClellan thing. No, just don't. People have brought up Joe Quenneville. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Let me see. I mean, yeah. If I had to pick a guy, I'd probably say Jim Montgomery. I would go with that
So
one.
someone outside the organization?
Yeah, yeah. And I think Pat Verbeek is too focused on, okay, I want him to think like me, because we both come from a very tough background. But the problem is that, Greg Cronin didn't play at the National Hockey League level. He said that many times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's like, I only played in college, so, some of these things I don't know what to say. And I'm like, there's your answer. He just doesn't simply know. And we're seeing and we're learning the growing pains of a new NHL head coach too as well. It's only his second season, so.
All right, cool. Well, that's pretty much all I have for you, Zach. So
yeah,
thanks so much, man, for jumping on. And
yeah.
where could people check out Ducks Game Day Breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. Thanks for having me on, man. And if you ever need a Ducks guy, I'm your guy. So.
Where could people check out your Ducks Game Day Breakdown at?
So you guys can check us out on Instagram. We're on Threads, TikTok, YouTube. I'll never call it X. Twitter. So you guys can check us out on all the major platforms and stuff. And definitely go check out. I would recommend YouTube, Nick, your page and stuff, man, because you post some really good hockey articles and everything. So definitely go check out Nick.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.